We'll fade in after that.
He said no filter. Did he not say no filters?
It said no filters.
Mr. Ashley Best, thank you for coming in. We appreciate you coming
Hey,
in.
thanks for having me. I
Glad to
appreciate
finally
it.
have you in, man.
Yeah.
Singer, songwriter, musician, and traveler of 250, a road that's very familiar with us.
Twisty and turny.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, so thank you for coming. How was the season? How's the concert season for you this past one?
It's been good. Been busy.
Yeah.
We put in some state. We got up into Michigan, which we never was in before. That's all.
You're not allowed to say that. It's Michigan. You can't say that. You can't say that M word.
Well, the crowd that we had up there was really good to us. So I can't be hard on them.
Yeah.
I got to take football not out of the equation. I even told them that. I'm like, usually, we don't like people from Michigan, but tonight I really like you.
This is a time of year when you still see some bands performing outdoors right now. I'm sure that they canceled that for the season.
Yeah. We was in Sagatuck, Michigan, which it was tourist town. It was funny, as we're driving up through there, we go through, I took the long route, the scenic route.
Yeah.
I don't like big cities, so we took, we go across, all of Ohio into Indiana, up into Michigan, and my lead guitar player is like, if I fell asleep and woke up, I wouldn't even known I left. Yeah. It looked all the same.
Yeah.
it all looks the same, and it's like,
Yeah, it's once you start heading out west and you get a little bit past Columbus and it just starts going to cornfields.
Yeah.
And I went to, my buddy got done from the Marines and I flew out to California because we had to get his car back and we just tandem drove back. And I remember we went through from California to Ohio was just flat desert. Then you get to Kansas, flat fields, flat cornfields, and you're finally here where you finally actually see some change in elevation.
Yeah.
That's one thing, and I don't know, probably Kay says the same thing. I know Amy says, just even from them growing up in Columbus.
Yeah.
It's all flat and cornfields, and then just 2 hours away, we're on the edge of Appalachia, and they were like...
The beauty begins.
Yeah, it really
they didn't know what a hill was until they moved here, so it's...
I took... trucking schooling through Schneider Trucking. So we was up in Green Bay, Wisconsin doing the schooling and that. And, I'm driving the semi and that. And he's like, once you go up over this hill, turn left, and I'm driving. And he's like, why didn't you turn left? I'm like, where's the hill? And I was like, oh, you mean that little grade? I was like, yeah, that's not a hill, man. I could take you home and show you some hills.
Yeah.
That's a pothole for us. That's just,
they built this like mountain slope that they would put the semi into a skid and you had to bring it out of it. And I'm like, back home, you don't have to build that. We got that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like there's
natural
no
habitat.
Why do you train in the flatlands? Go to, around our area.
Yeah.
Like, you'll get some training out there.
And just think of like the merger at 470 by Elm Grove. Just think of all the training you would get from there. Just merge. That's like I would say that's like the most dangerous spot around here is that merge on those highways.
Well, what's funny is my last 6 years of active duty, I was stationed in Washington, D.C. And everybody's like, oh, the traffic. I'm like, I grew up in Pittsburgh. The traffic is nothing. I never thought that I would just welcome the Pittsburgh traffic as opposed to DC traffic. That 470 belt, or not 470, the beltway around the city and everything. I'm like, oh my God, I welcome Pittsburgh. That going through the tunnel, and you have about 30 feet to decide if you need to go left, right, center, and it's
20 signs pointing in different directions.
That's where you need to put truckers. Like, go through the tunnels, and you got to get 376 through Pittsburgh, but you're in the left-hand lane.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
So, where's the next gig for you? Up and coming.
See, tomorrow night I'll be up at in my hometown at Uptown Caddis. So all this year, I think that started in the spring, maybe around May. They started doing every third Friday. They would put on, block off one side of the street, bring in vendors and what have you. Try to bring the community together. Michelle Homier, which is actually my neighbor, She's out of Michigan. Her and her husband moved down, but see, they liked it. They came down here and they liked it so much that they moved down here.
Yeah.
And she actually opened up a store in our hometown, the Cowgirl and Me. Where I actually got this shirt, so they
Shout
do.
out Cowgirl Me.
Yeah, that's right.
right,
Everywhere I go, I try to promote her, and that she's really
Absolutely.
great. So they have guys, outfits too, but shirts and what have you. But so since she came in our community, she's like, she tries to get out there and just bring the community together.
Yeah.
And this thing has grown so much. I volunteered one Friday and just went up there and put on a show, and they had such a good response that they invited me back, and so now it has grown to like, what is it, 60 vendors? 60
Wow,
vendors
nice.
coming, and they got both sides of the street. So when you go through Square Caddis, you can only literally go straight through on Route 9 because the other side's shut down and there's just massive people everywhere. So I'm excited to get and do that one. And then Saturday I'm up in Salem.
I would say on.
Yeah, and then.
So this will come out Tuesday, so we'll miss this coming weekend.
Oh yeah,
Do you
no,
know
whoops!
just now
There's some editing to do.
That's right.
Yeah, it's okay.
If you're listening now, I hope you had a great time at the Ashley Best show.
Yeah.
So where are you next weekend?
Next
Which would be
weekend. Where am I next weekend?
24th, 25th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
24th,
24th, 25th.
24th, 25th. I didn't even write that down because I was thinking of this weekend.
Well,
That's all right.
now that you're trying to figure out where you're at, I mean, it's good because you see that in this area popping up a lot. Like Steubenville has First Fridays, and
right.
Wintersville started doing the First Wednesdays,
Yeah.
and Caddis is doing. It's cool that you start seeing everything in the community that they start doing that again.
Right.
That we're bringing the community back together. We're getting local talent and
Right.
And out there. So that's awesome, and I'm glad. And if I know we're towards the end of the year now, but next year look at that for Caddis. To go out there and support them because we got to start at some place, and especially if we start at home, especially if you're from the Caddis.
Right.
Are you from Caddis?
I am from Caddis.
Okay,
yes.
yeah. So that means a lot.
And the
to you
amazing
right there.
thing is like I worked at Jefferson Landmark in Caddis, which is a
Okay.
feed mill,
Yeah.
and I gig, and I would say 90% of Caddis don't even know that I sing.
Really?
Yeah. I'll have my CDs for sale at the counter right there. And people come up and look at it and he's like, yeah, hey, I'll take one of these, and I'll just, I was like, well, thanks. I appreciate you supporting me. And they're like, what? And they're like, that's you? That's me.
Yeah. Was it before the beard and maybe short hair or something?
No, it was all the same. No, I usually pulled my hair back, but at the same time, they're just like, that's you? I'm like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, you haven't listened to it yet. Maybe listen to it and you'll understand. So where am I next week?
I'll cut you out.
Yeah, he's going.
We can edit it.
Proctor. I'm in Proctor, West Virginia Friday. Yeah,
Proctor, West Virginia.
Proctor,
Friday.
West Virginia.
down at Rogers Wagon Wheel. So that'll be the
Rogers
first
Wagon
time I'll be down there.
Solo.
Yeah, solo
Solo.
acoustic. The rest of this year is just solo acoustic.
Okay.
Gets a little tough getting the bands in some of the
Right.
places. I can take on smaller venues.
Mm-hmm.
This is now, all I do. I retired from the feed mill because my back couldn't take it no more.
Yeah.
So, and I was just, it was, to me, it just feels like it's time. So I just decided I'm going to do music, and so far so good. We're making it.
And you're going back in the studio. You were mentioning it before. we started
Right.
filming.
Yeah, right. I'm working on a new album. The one thing I found when I had left, Landmark gracefully has hired me 7 times. I hold the record for the most times that one employee has been hired back. Yeah. And the last 2 times, I didn't call them; they called me. So
That's a good thing.
I'm proud of that.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
So when I released the EP in 2018, I believe, I walked away from it, I walked away from Landmark and said, "That's it, I'm done." I'm gonna make all these royalties off of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't happen. So, but in the meantime, I was building my own house. So, I needed the summer off anyhow to build the basement. So I went back in the fall. And then I left again when we done the album. I write 10 times more when I'm not working a public job.
Yeah.
Because you got, you're not thinking, for 8 or 10 hours that you're at your job, you're thinking about your job.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there might be some things that spark and like, you'll come up with, I was always known for having a piece of paper and a pen with me.
Yeah.
Because, something just kind of sparks, you write it down and hope that you can remember what you was thinking about when you wrote that down to write the song. But when we created the album Something, got it recorded, got it released, I walked away from Landmark and I wrote this album that we're working on now.
Okay.
But I'm still writing now. I thought I had it all written. Now I've been writing all summer. I left Landmark, I think it was in April. I was actually going down to Texas to play, and I only made it to Kentucky. And I got spinal stenosis from lifting so much. So it's like, my legs are giving me a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Right.
So, driving, I realized I'm not going to drive to Texas from Ohio. It's just not happening.
Right.
So we made it down by Lexington and that turned around, came back home. It took me 3 days to get back home. 'Cause I basically, when I'm sitting there, I just go paralyzed and I can't move. So
It's miserable.
the legs, it's not. And so that was the main reason why I left Landmark. I'm like, this is done. It's music or nothing, and determination. That's
So if you just for our viewers that don't know, give us a little autobiography of Ashley on, like, you're from Caddis. What did you do growing up? When did you get into music? What was
okay. This will take 2 hours. We're talking about myself. I love it. No. So when I was a kid growing up, my grandpa on my mom's side, Ronald Howe, he had country bands and what have you and that. And my mom had this, my dad had bought my mom this reel-to-reel recorder deal, tape.
Yeah.
So my grandpa borrowed it as he was practicing for a show. And so, like, he died when I was 4 years old. So, my memory of him is very faint.
Yeah.
right?
But we had those recordings. So I would sit there and listen to them recordings. We wore the tape out because I listened to it so much, especially around like the holidays and that, we'd whip it out. And so that was one of the first, I guess I didn't really know at the time that I wanted to record, but I thought it was so neat that he was, he had passed away and I could still hear him.
Yeah.
So then, fast forward to I'm now about 10, 11 years old. I think it was the ACMs was on, and Dwight Yoakam and Buck Owens was on there singing the streets of Bakersfield. And I remember walking past the couch. I didn't listen to music much, even at this point in time, but I walked past the couch and I stopped and I'm like, who is that? And it's just like, from that point, I was a Dwight Yoakam fan. And I loved his sound, what he was doing. And which then, fast forward to when I was 14, my dad was a coal miner, so coal mining was not much of a thing because we were talking about like 1989, 1990, and it had been dead for a while.
Yeah.
Right.
So, him growing up, he grew up on farms. They had dairy farms. His dad was a coal miner, and but my dad, even as a kid, was doing the milking, what have you, and that, took care of the cows and that. So he always wanted a dairy farm. So we ended up selling the house that I grew up on or in, and we bought land in Caddis, which I grew up just in Little York, which is probably about 7 miles from Caddis. And so that summer was probably most crucial because we went out there and we dug a hole and we built a house. Him and I and my brother was building the house. My brother loves music, always had the radio on. And that summer right there is probably when I just got sucked in to music. It was 1990. It's 90s country, just,
Yeah.
coming full circle.
Right.
And I fell in love with it. And from that point on, I was begging my dad for a guitar. By 16, he gives me a guitar. And I'm like, how about some lessons? Roger Horde sold me the first guitar, which,
Okay.
I always tell Roger that. I'm like,
Yeah.
you don't remember me, but I was like, he hands, me this $150 Yamaha guitar, and I could never make it sound as good as Roger Horde did. He's just sitting there playing it, and I'm like, oh my God. And, my dad's like, you think you can do that? I'm like, well, maybe if you give me some lessons with this guy.
Right. Yeah.
So my dad told me, he's like, if you want it bad enough, you'll figure it out.
It's
Okay.
funny because we've had Roger in here, and I
Actually
don't know if
watched.
you
I
really
watched that
understand
episode. Yeah.
how many people that he is literally
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
influenced
Yeah.
in this tri-state
Naming
area
off top of his head. And,
yeah, I mean,
I used to get so nervous, like when I walk in CA house and there's Roger there, and I'm like, I'm going up to the desk. I'm like, I hated it when he came into the acoustic room, because I'm like, oh my God, here I am sitting, I'm just beating on this thing,
Yeah.
and I'm like, here, could you please make it sound good?
Mm-hmm.
And but he'd be at the counter, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Roger Horde, it's Roger Horde, it's Roger Horde.
That's awesome.
And then I think you ran into him at like the Waterfront Hall or something when you had another gig. You're like, Roger recognized me. I think you're like,
I was like I've never been. I mean, I can play like 4 chords on a guitar, and it's terrible. But I'm a bass player and a drummer, and we had Roger in here, and he was at the Waterfront, and I walked by, and I was like, "Hey, Roger," and he's like, "Hey, Scott, how you doing?" And I literally, I'm like, he knew who I was. It's like holy God, but it's funny, but yeah, he's so influential for so many people.
One time I went to CA house. I think we was going to a gig, so I had to get in and out. I go in. I think I was just grabbing some strings and that, and I seen Roger in his office and that, and I didn't say anything. He had already. I've worked with him, on I Believe already, the EP and that. We hadn't done the album yet, and but so I go in. I cash out. I'm walking out. I'm out in the parking lot, and Roger Horde's coming running out. Hey, Ashley, how's it going, man? I'm like, holy crap! He chased me down in the parking lot. I was like, now I've made it.
Yeah. That's awesome. That that you remember like certain, like you said, you walking by and hearing Dwight Yoakam, and that. I'm guessing in the summer of 1990, you weren't listening to a lot of Boys to Men. And,
no.
Has it always been country for you? Do you
Well,
take like rock?
no.
You see, we're like a mixed bag.
Right. So in around my when I was about 16 or so, I started, I listened to Dwight. So I'm like, I loved him. I wanted to know what made him him. So I then, learned all about, the Bakersfield sound. Buck Owens and Merle Haggard and what have you, and all this and that. And then I dove into the 1950s music, early 60s music. And I just, that whole scene, the Everly Brothers and all that. Buddy Holly, I was a huge fan of Buddy Holly through all this,
Yeah.
And then it just kind of like I dove into just a little bit of everything, just learning what I liked and what I wanted to sound like. Yeah. And I started writing when I was 16. They was bad. I had a few of them that I saved, thank God. It was bad, but it was the initial start. When I was in high school, during lunchtime, I sat at a table all by myself. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, you sat by yourself." I loved it because it gave me, that was my time to be by myself to write, and that's what I was doing at that table by myself. I'd always have the pen. I'm tapping and I'm writing and I'm tapping and and it was the beginning of what is today. And I took a long route. By the time it was, I want to say when I was 18 or so, I started karaokeing. Good God, I can't. I hate to admit that I even did that, but
Yeah.
it was the start of it. We go into bars and they would let me karaoke and what have you, and I was never satisfied because it was never a chance to be myself.
Yeah.
And, so as time went on, we had built this farm, my dad and I, and, he was adamant that, stay here, do this. And I tried, but it wasn't, who I was.
Yeah.
And so he was not a fan. So he wasn't a fan of the idea. So therefore he wasn't a fan of my music. and there was never any praise of it. There was always, don't do it, and even when, he passed away right as something was coming out, we had literally got it in the actual CDs, and I let him listen to it before it was sent to be mastered and everything. And he's like, "You're wasting your time and your money."
Really?
So I didn't actually start gigging until I was probably about 29 is when I started sitting down writing. My first wife had passed away unexpectedly, and it sent me into a downward spiral. Music's what brought me out of it. I had to release all these feelings,
Right,
and so it was through music I started writing again. I quit writing from probably about 20 to 29. I hadn't wrote nothing. I just I'm like this. I went down to Nashville to see what it was all like, and I loved it, but I didn't know. I didn't feel like I was good at playing. And so I had never recorded nothing, and so I just let it all go. And then when that happened, it had to come back.
I went down when I visited Nashville. I remember it was before I really got the Nashville number chart down. I was always more of like the chord classical guy, and I just remember thinking like, man, this is just a whole language that everybody down here is like talking that I don't understand. I had to go back and learn.
I still don't understand it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I still just beat the heck out of that guitar. I honestly, God, like every time I purchase a guitar, I apologize to it. I was like, I'm sorry you ended up with me.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Rich Investments Group. Attention investors, looking for a secure way to grow your wealth? Rich Investments Group, based right here in St. Clairsville, Ohio, is offering an incredible opportunity. Their private lenders earn returns up to 3 times higher than a typical CD. And the best part, your investment is backed by the property's mortgage. That means real, tangible security. Rich Investments Group prioritize transparency, communication, and delivering industry-leading ROI. It's time to put your money to work for you. Don't miss out on this chance to grow your wealth securely with Rich Investments Group. And visit their website, richinvestmentsgroup.com, today to learn more. And if you actually go back to episode 20, you can kind of meet Jordan and Eric, the creators of the company, and see all like the services they offer and their business model and plan. They also offer free seminars if you want to get into real estate yourself. It's just an incredible company to look into. That's Rich Investments Group. Now, are you all acoustic? Do you dabble in electric at all, or have you always been?
I'm always acoustic. My, in the band and that, my guitar player, Bob Mazzell, who's also with Sarah Hayes' band, that he's tried to lean to get me to do electric, and I'm like, no, just not. He's like, well, you got these really cool rhythms and that, and the things you do, it would sound so good on electric. I'm like, yeah. I like a jumbo acoustic guitars. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Is there a brand that you're...
I've always dreamed of having a Gibson J200.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not going to pay that and abuse it.
Right, yeah.
So I had an Alvarez. I went over CA House and bought an Alvarez jumbo that they had there. And it, unfortunately, I took that guitar with me everywhere for probably 3 years, maybe. I went to Oklahoma, Texas, down to Florida, the Carolinas, and that. It traveled with me, and I went to Cincinnati to do a gig, and the travel going down and the travel going back with it in the back of the car, sun hitting that, it warped the neck on it.
Oh.
And I'm at the county fair. We came back, we played Carroll County Fair, and I'm like, something ain't feeling right. It's not tuning right, and it's cutting my fingers, and I'm like, what is wrong? And I'm looked down at it, and I'm like, oh man. So I went to unloose the truss rod, and it just stripped out in there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I cried. I took it to Roger, and I'm like, fix it, please. And he's like,
it's dead.
Honestly, he's like, we'd have to put a new neck on it, and that would be more than what the guitar's worth. I'm like, yeah, but this is my baby.
It's like you're at a veterinarian or something.
Yeah.
It's time to put it down.
Yeah.
There's usually like 5 to 10 years ago, there was a real big trend of, they were calling it like player series acoustics, where the necks were like half the size.
Yeah.
And it was trying to attract like the more probably like the more electric people to come back to it. And that there was a problem with their necks. acoustic guitar sweats so much more.
Yeah,
And
it's a struggle, like especially in the summertime around here, humidity. Yeah, you're just constantly, you might. It drives me nuts when it goes out of tune in the middle of a song, and you're like, I just want so bad to tune it real quick, but you're in the middle of a song, you can't. So, but
we had talked about this before. I have an acoustic bass, and Ibanez acoustic bass, and when I got sick, it was out in our garage, which wasn't heated. Like after everything was over, I'm like, I gotta get I kept thinking I gotta get that thing out of the garage and stuff, and I pulled it out, and I was scared to death. I mean, I was like, this thing's probably done. It's toast. It was out in the garage, no heat, no nothing, and it was a half a step off. All 4 chords. I went, oh, thank you. And that thing has been everywhere, like inside the house. It's babied now, but it's like you said, it's the littlest things that can throw them out, and you're just like.
Well, when I was down in Cincinnati playing and around that region, that I was doing. We actually come back from Cincinnati. Was going north to do a campground up there where they had a pool, and I was doing it by the poolside. That's where it was, is when I come back from that, went up there. So I'm playing by the poolside. There was a thunderstorm rolling in that day, and I left that guitar sitting there just long enough that I think it just sucked all that moisture. And then I throw it in the car, and the sun's beating down on it, and it just, it tweaked it bad.
I ruined I think it was my first Alvarez. I ruined it because I was doing that. When you think of like an acoustic guitar, you think sitting around a campfire with your friends, but when it's a real humid night, you have that fire, you can feel like you're just sweating like a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so like going back to your songwriting, and I'm just completely envious of anybody that can songwrite. I think that's a talent that is like no other, and it's just, you hear of these people that, I just went down, I was going fly fishing, and I sat there. I was waiting for my buddy to get there, and I wrote this song in 15 minutes. I'm like, how, where on your songwriting do you find inspiration? You had said before that you had some tragedy that helped you do that, but like now, I mean, where do you find inspiration to songwrite?
Here's because I got friends out of Nashville, not that friend of mine. He's like, I write 2 songs a day. Every day, 365 days a year. I'm like, I don't write a song. I let the song come to me. And believe it or not, most of the times I'm usually on a tractor. I'm usually cutting hay, and I'm just sitting there listening to the wind. And when it starts whipping into the leaves, I don't know what it is. It's like on my first EP, There Was Nothing Ever Seems to Do. That was probably the second song I ever wrote. And it was, I think it was in around July, and it was hot. I remember that because it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. It was already like 90 degrees. And I had been out drinking all that night before. I'm sitting there, I'm hungover, and my head's killing me, and I'm just about as low as I thought I could go. And the wind started blowing through this big maple tree. And I swear to God, that song, that tree just literally spoke the words to that song. I didn't even write it down. I just grabbed my guitar, started whistling it. And I think that song took me 7 minutes. And it was probably, my brother, he'll contest that is the best song I will ever write. And I was like, and that's just usually how it comes. Awesome. I don't usually try to force it. It's just like something will happen, and it just comes. And we recently just went through a whole deal with the family farm. It was supposed to go to me. It ended up not going to me, and so I hopped on the tractor. I still lease. I live across from the farm, and I lease another farm over here, and so I hopped on the tractor, put the brush hog on, and I just started brush hogging, and the wind started blowing, and I'm like, here it comes. So I think it was 2 days later, I wrote the song Rewind. And it was basically, if I could just rewind my life and go back to this time, this is what I would do different. And I would have just, I would have just dove into the music and just not let anybody talk me out of it.
Wow. That's
so like the content, like the lyrics of your songs come from your personal experience.
They're all-
It's almost like you have a muse that
Right.
Right.
comes back to you.
You know,
That uses that tree in the wind.
Yeah.
Right. So like the funny thing is like all through my 20s and that, you know, I like to have a good time. So, you know, I bar hopped a lot. You know, me and my wife, first wife, we would, you know, Friday and Saturday night, we enjoyed going to the bar, especially if there's a live band, you know, get there, you know, and dance and have a good time in that, you know. And then with everything that I went through in my 20s and that, you know, and I questioned, you know, alcohol in a relationship never works very well. We didn't have the best of a relationship and what have you, that, you know. And, you know, as I got older, I'm like, why did I go through that? Why didn't I just do this and that? I'm now writing about those, you know, all my drinking songs. Everybody's like, man, you can write a good drinking song. We was in the studio. The new song that we're working up for the album is called Saddle Up and that. And it's me. It's what I did. And, you know, my engineer, Cody Rumshack, he's like, man, you can write a good drinking song. I was like, I lived it. You know, I was like, I always wondered, why did I live through that? That's so I could write about it today. And so almost every song I write is personal. To me, that's the way it has to be. It's not for everybody. There's people that can sit down and write. My thing has always been, I want quality over quantity.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I might only write 6 songs a year, but they're usually, I'm going to brag on myself, they're usually good songs.
Yeah.
So what is the point in writing 2 songs a day for 365 days out of a year and only one of them's good? You just wasted a bunch of time. What happens is when you try to force it, you become repetitive, and every song starts sounding the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the words, steep, you know, the hook. What's the hook in the song? Up until just maybe this past year is the first time that I tried putting a hook in. I didn't really give a shit what it sounded. You know, I wrote the, you know. My hardest thing is taking a song, a story, turn it into a song and getting it down into that 3.5 to 4 minute region. You know, the Farmer that I wrote, that was on the album, that song was like 7 minutes long. And it was so personal to me. It's something I wanted to put on the album. And like literally the day that we go in to record it, I finally get it chopped down. I'm like, I got 2 hours before, you know, we go to the studio, time for chopping. And I put it together, and you know, I get a lot of compliments off of that song, and you know, it's like, you know, it's a personal song, you know.
Why do you feel that you need to chop it down from 7 minutes?
Not to bore people to death. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I pay too much attention to what commercial radio is.
Right.
My ultimate goal, you know, as a songwriter, is to have a song on the radio.
Right.
Why does it matter so much today? I don't know. It's still just a personal goal. I know how the business works. I've been in this business long enough, and you know, I understand Nashville. I understand the radio, iHeartMedia, and all that.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Why am I trying so hard? Good question. Who cares?
Well, I'm just wondering if it's a song that means that much to you.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is if you put it down and you put that on an album, so it doesn't hit mainstream media, but if you put it on an album and it hits that many people and it's that much to you, especially like now. I mean, like you said, it's not anymore like where you had to get it down to 3.5 minutes to go on radio because God knows. Taylor Swift had that one song she did. It's like 11 minutes long. They play it.
All too
Look at
well,
Bohemian
I know.
Rhapsody. It was.
I don't know who came up with that number, you know, but it's a like you go back in and you look at even like Leonard Skinner, 7 minute songs. They had them, you know. Nobody complained about it. Nobody said anything about it. They just done it. I don't know. I guess I looked at like the Farmer. I remember when we put it on the album. I told my wife, I'm like, I'm doing this for me because I was like, only 1% of America is farmers. So only 1% is ever going to understand this song to that point. So it was a good point that I probably should have just left it the way it was. It's a good song. It probably was a better song at 7 minutes. I will say that because it told
you put it as the bonus track on the end of the album.
Right. Because it just tells a clearer picture.
Or like a radio edit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, but yeah, I was just curious because, like I said, I could hear the passion in your voice about writing that song, and at last minute, you're like, I got to chop it.
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
We talked about it before the episode too. It's like when you're in the studio too with a bunch of producers, you know, when they're telling you you should do this, you should do this. I mean, like you're thinking like, well, they know the best, and
Yeah.
you kind of get carried away. With that.
That's the one thing. The further I get into this, and especially with recording and that, I'll never forget. Like when we went in to record with I Believe, you know, I insisted. I went to Tony's Treasures, which is Mark Puskarich's studio. It's 7 miles out of Caddis. So I'm on the computer. I Googled and listened to every demo out of Nashville for a studio, trying to find a studio. I'm like, I'm going to Nashville, you know, I'm going to record down there. So I'm listening. I think I listened to over 200 different demos. I come upon this one, I hit it, and I'm like, man, that demo is really good. It's clean, it's crisp, you know. And I like Tony's Treasures, Caddis, Ohio. It's 7 miles from my house. So, you know, so I get a hold of Cody and we talked for probably about an hour and that. And he's like, well, you know, I'll talk to Mark. You know, this kind of a blues studio, I don't know, a year later is how long it took to get into that studio.
Wow,
that they would let me come in. And I talked when I talked to Mark on the phone, I'm like, there's one stipulation. And he's like, what's that? I was like, Roger Horde is going to be on guitar. And he's like, I don't know if I can make that happen. And I was like, well, that's a stipulation. So they made it happen. And
Nice.
you know, it was when I met with Roger the night before the band came in to do everything. We went over the songs. He wanted to make sure everything was good, you know. And the one thing that, you know, Roger, I think, knew when I walked into the, you know, he's like, oh yeah, I've seen you before, you know. So when we went over this, you know, he told me, he's like, you know, there's one thing, you know, he's like, you're better than what you think you are. He's like, that's the one thing. He's like, I can tell from you don't have a whole lot of confidence. He's like, your songs are better than what you think they are. And so,
yeah, sometimes that's all you need is just somebody, especially somebody you look
well,
up to.
after all
like
the
that.
years of saying,
Yeah.
you know, the one thing, you know, when I was 18, I sent a song down to Nashville, and that, you know, I got it out of Country Weekly magazine. You know, this article, you know, you can send here, you know, we'll cut you a demo, what have you.
yeah.
So they sent it back, you know, and, you know, I was all excited. I'm like, they said, yes, we will record. I'm sure they told everybody yes, but I was excited,
Yeah.
you know, and, you know, he's like, for just $200, you know, we can do, you know, this and that. And, you know, I'm contemplating, you know, should I do this or shouldn't I do it? And my dad's like, you know, look, if this song was any good, they'd be paying you $200, not you paying them $200.
Yeah.
The song ain't no good. You need to give this up. You know, so when Roger said that, I was like, you know, whew, finally.
Yeah, that's got it. But I mean, if it's any consolation, you look at anybody that, I mean, I don't care if it's artist, comedian, whatever. Everybody that made it big, their dad behind them was like, yeah, have a fallback career.
Right.
Like I think Robin
Yeah.
Williams' dad
Right.
said, learn accounting.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
Right.
just,
Right.
and you have those people. So I found out, and I don't mean this at any disrespect at all towards your dad, but sometimes people tell you that you can't because they can't.
Right.
So it's
Right.
not, and I mean no
Right.
disrespect
Oh,
to your
no.
father at
Right.
all, but sometimes you'll hear people going, you can't do that.
Right.
So they know that it's hard for them, or that maybe they can't do it. So they're going to tell you, well, I know I wouldn't be able to do that, so what, you can't do it, but
Right. See, the hindsight between, and it's in the song Rewind. You know, now I understand why he didn't want me to do it. It wasn't because I wasn't any good at it, and it wasn't that he didn't think I was good at it. If I left, his dream of that farm died
Yeah.
yeah,
because I was the only one working it.
yeah,
And that's what it was all about. If I left, then there goes his dream,
right,
which in the end, there went his dream anyhow.
right.
And that's where Rewind came. You know, it was, there's another personal song that, you know, I had actually written that song twice, like 2 years ago, 2 years prior to this, before my dad passed away. You know, that wasn't even that. It's probably that was probably less than a year before he passed away. Him and I wasn't even on speaking terms because I went out to country concert out in Fort Laramie, played a nice big show out there. And then I go down in just about 60 miles east of Nashville. I'm down there playing. And when I come back, he was done. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm done with you, because I was chasing after what I was doing. And what it all boiled down to is there's nobody to take that farm over,
Yeah.
and that's, and then when I lose the farm, I'm like, I'm crushed.
Yeah.
I'm like, this was the whole, as much as I hated it, it was like, this is what I sacrificed my music career for. I gave, I didn't pursue after this because of this farm. And then when I get, to this point, now I'm content where I'm at I'm playing, Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and I'm content. I'm able to make a living at it. And then my mom sells the farm away. And I'm like, now I'm pissed.
Yeah.
Cause I'm like, now I got to let's go. It's full. Cause I was like, I'm not walking out of this lifetime without something, so it's like, here we go.
Yeah.
So, that's one, I wasn't going to put another album together. I was kind of I'm content, I'm like, let's just, I got enough reputation now where I can just do my thing here. And not now. Now it's like, let's put this album together and let's go chase it again. So everything happens for a reason, right?
Yeah, listen, I'm a firm believer that whoever is running the universe puts you exactly where you need to be, when you need to be. And
each time I've done this, the EP is I Believe, then I come out with the album Something. I'm like, I'm building a sentence here. I don't know what it is. So the album, this upcoming album is called Keep On Keeping On. That was the very first show I ever done was Jefferson County Fair, and Jack Ingram out of Texas was up there playing. And so he's main stage. I'm just off by the 4-H kitchen at the pavilion, the Rosa Pavilion, and I'm playing that. I brought one pick. I broke the pick like 2 songs in, and I'm like, "Does anybody have a pick?" Well, lo and behold, Jack Ingram's in the 4-H kitchen. He's like, "I got you," So he hands me some picks, and that I play that set, and I go, he lets me hang out on the bus with him, which I thought was cool, and I says, what's the trick to this, Jack? How do I make this work? And there again, he's like, man, you got some good songs, and I was like, what's the trick to this? How do we make this work? He's like, you got a day job? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, quit. I'm like, what? I was working at Nichols Bakery, a maintenance guy, good job with that. And he's like, quit. He's like, and then you just keep on keeping on.
Okay.
So I did. I quit. And this isn't Texas.
Right, yeah.
And you can't, at that time it was a struggle, getting in places and, but, so I've never had any fear of just walking away from a job and going after it. I'm a firm believer. If you're going to do it, you both feet in and go.
Yeah.
And you sink or swim. And if you sink, somebody will throw you a life vest and you get out of the water until you're ready to go back in.
Right.
But you just, that's my theory.
Well, you're going after it like you are hungry. I mean, I looked at your social media. I mean, you're keeping all your fans updated where you're playing weeks and weeks in advance. I mean, I see some artists that'll be like, hey, we're coming here tomorrow.
Yeah. That when I was trying to get in with Blame My Roots, I talked with Chris Dutton, and him and I had went several rounds, and he told me, he's like, one thing, he's like, I will say about you, he's like, you promote. He's like, I've checked your social, you promote, and him and I have went rounds and rounds and rounds, and I consider him a good friend now. Him and I have, we beat our heads together and that, but we've, at the end of the day, I was playing out Buckeye Lake, and I'm playing Buffalo Lick. It's a new bar that opened up, and that, and way in the background, I'm like, man, I swear that's Chris Dutton. And then I get done with my set, he comes up, and I'm like, hardly recognize you with your ball cap on, but it was Chris Dutton. He came out and checked out my show, and that, awesome. And he had invited me for ranch night with Sammy Kershaw and Brian Martin. And I guess what I'm trying to say is he, over the years, he has learned to respect who I am. Yeah. And, and I respect him for it, because, it's easy in this business to, butt heads and neither side gives in. But I like to say that the music, I think, finally was good enough to, and I think I proved myself enough.
Yeah. It was a farmer approaching another farmer, too.
Right,
yeah.
right.
When you said that you do your own promoting, I will say that it was very impressive because Like I said, I saw you at Belmont County Fair.
Yeah.
You had your merch table, you had the band up there, you
Yeah.
had everything. And I mean, in the matter of like 10 minutes, you were gone. Like, like I went up and like set up my bass and I turned around because I wanted to come and talk to you.
Yeah.
And like everything was gone and I basically grabbed you right before you were getting ready to get in your van. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, it was nice meeting you.
Yeah.
You did a great job. And
Yeah,
poof, you were gone.
Yeah.
You have a system down. So.
Yeah. We had what we was doing that day. We didn't technically leave. We got out of Yun's guys' way. I had my kids with me.
Yeah.
So we walked around. I actually was catching your show in the next building over because it was pouring down rain.
Right. Yeah,
so,
it was.
Yeah. Because anytime Matt's around, I've got, I think Matt and I kind of share a similarity in that we're not always the most popular in this region. We're different, by different means. And anytime you're trying to do your original material in a region that has a lot of cover bands, it's, I had actually, when I first started, I was doing 3 hours of just original. And every time I, do covers, I've talked to a lot of people in the business say, in your first set, of 15 songs, do one original, do covers, all the rest, you build your fan base. And that the one thing that I will say that I noticed with that, there's a band I'm not going to mention that I watched them do that. They built a nice fan base. They went to Nashville, cut an EP. They came back to this region to start doing their original music. They was throwing it in. I contacted them. I was like, how's it going? They dropped it from their set list.
Really?
Nobody was responding to it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, here's the thing. And that was, I've always been a fighter in the fact of, everybody has their own way of doing it. My way is I'm going to bring you my music. If I do a cover song 9 times out of 10, it's not even going to sound the same as what the original was. Because that's what I do in my downtime.
You got to get him.
No, I'm going to kick him out. Okay. Go ahead and continue. I'll just cut myself walking out.
So my theory has been you cannot become a good, solid songwriter and perform it well if you ain't out there performing it.
Right.
So, I can tell, like, if I write a song, it doesn't matter if I think there's songs that, are personal. I don't care what the audience says. I'm going to play it.
Right.
But I'm not going to do it every show. I'm just going to do it every show that I feel that I need to do it.
Right.
But there's songs like if I write it, I'm like, okay, let's see how this one goes. So I watch a response to see, I'm like, yeah, this one's going. I know at my shows when people do this, they're doing it because of something I created.
Yeah.
It's not because I played them their favorite cover song, and I've seen a lot of places where, there's people, and I've been told this, it's their day off. It's Friday night. They've worked all week. It's their time. And I'm like, okay, well, when's it my time?
Right.
It's kind of, so I try to get now where there's about a 50% blend.
Yeah.
But now solo acoustic season for me. And I'm just pulling covers back out and I'm just putting originals back in. And I'm like, now's, especially as the album's coming together and I thought I had it all written, but now I'm writing songs. I'm like, oh, this song is better than this song. So let's, hold this one back and put this one on. But, so yeah, everybody has their own way of doing it. And my way is just pound it down their throat and become as best as you can. And I know down like in Nashville, it was one thing I was always surprised. I go down to Nashville from the first time to the last time I've been down there. And all the bars on, the main drag, they're playing, cover songs. And I'm like, where's the original music at? This is Nashville. Yeah, you play out in public, the cover songs and you go behind the doors and you write and play, in the listening rooms and what have you.
Right.
So, I got down into Irvine, Kentucky. Bob Wan out of Michigan. There's another Michigan. I'm just.
That's three Michigan shout-outs.
I just keep throwing all these Michigan people out. But he had set up Holla Holler down in Irvine, Kentucky. And so I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, can I come down? It's a listening room. And I've tried Columbus. I've tried Cleveland. I've tried Pittsburgh. I couldn't get in any listening rooms. And so Bob's like, he listened to my stuff. He's like, absolutely, come down. So me and Bob Mizell go down there and we play. It holds maybe 50 people, and that night was probably my favorite night that I've ever been.
Really?
You know, they didn't want to just hear the song; they wanted to hear where it came from. You know, so I got to sit there and tell the stories of it, and I had a blast. And I'm actually going back in November. I think around the 16th, 17th, somewhere around there. We're doing almost a full week down there in Kentucky.
That's fantastic.
Nice.
I've fallen in love with Kentucky. I've traveled it so many times coming up out of Nashville and usually I just come out of Nashville, and once I hit that Kentucky line, I just start driving across it. I don't want to go up it. I want to go across it. I want to see what, I've covered, I think, every inch of Kentucky, and I've just fallen in love with that state. And there's so much music down in there, and the appreciation for original music down in there is just so good.
Well, I think the other thing is too is I know my wife is a huge Nashville fan. She's been down there a number of times, and I was never there until once we were married and we went down it. But even the 3 times that I've been down, it's just so commercialized. It's not about like the old days where you get the Laylas and that where you just got somebody out there putting their heart and soul.
Yeah.
And it's just like you said, it's cover band and they sing and sing and sing, and the next thing you know, they're off the stage and somebody else is coming back up and they're doing their versions. And it's that thing where you hear originals and just I think it's big because Broadway has become so commercialized. You lose that.
Yes, absolutely. Like we went down for the Josie Awards in 2023, right? 23, yeah, because we released the album 22 January.
That's at the Opry.
Yeah. So okay, that was the fall of 22 because we released it in January. So yeah, we got in. Something was nominated for Country Album of the Year. There's 352,490 albums was submitted. Yeah. They picked the top 15. So I landed in the top 15 of that. And we would go down there, and I told her, I'm like, look, we got to go up Broadway. I'm going to take you up there so you can understand why I'm not a big fan of this town. And Nashville's one town I've never understood. And apparently I just ain't in the right region of it yet. I haven't, working, and I'm hoping here this winter to find that connection with, some songwriters and some producers that maybe I can start to appreciate Nashville more. I have spent years bashing Nashville. I seen it like, I think the first time I went down there was probably in 2002, 2003. You walked out, and on Broadway then, everything was a lot smaller then. Yeah. 11 a.m. when the bar's open, there's somebody in there playing.
Yeah.
It might not be a full band, but there's somebody in there playing. I go down, and it's like, before they had, I want to say it was like the 3rd or 4th time I was down there, they're knocking walls out, stuff's under construction and all that. And there's no bands nowhere, we walked the streets and I'm like, where are the bands at? And it maybe by like 1:30 in the morning, a band showed up at Tootsie's and started playing. They got the jukebox on. I'm like, where's the band at? Then I go back down for, the Josie Music Awards. And I was even blown away. I'm like, what in the hell? Yeah. 3 layers high of bars with 3 different style of musics. Open the windows and let it all puke out into the street. And sorry, Nashville, much, but Broadway, that's what it has become. And I'm like, they don't care. We stood outside of a bar. I told my wife, I was like, I gotta see this. It was terrible. Mm-hmm. The quality of, they don't care anymore.
Oh, the other thing is what I noticed is we went down there last time we went down. There was somebody that my wife likes on TikTok, and she was playing one of the bars. And what I didn't notice, and it might have been the other 2 times, and I probably didn't notice because I was, really
having a good time.
Yeah. But I noticed that like that last time we went down there, it was like you said, it's the cover band thing, but it's, well, if you want your song, here's our tip jar.
Yeah.
And the more you put in, the more likely we play your cover song. which I get, like those bars
Right.
don't pay them people. I
Right.
understand that, so you gotta make it, but still, it's kind of like I'm like you. I mean, you go to. I think I must have missed Nashville when I would think I would have really liked
Right.
Nashville when you go
Right.
down there and you
Right.
heard like the people that can write, sing, and
Right.
play and everything,
Right.
and they're out there putting their heart and soul in it, not just well I can sing Panic at the Disco cover
Right.
and
Right.
somebody go throw $50 in our tip jar. And
Right.
It's
Right.
Do you think it's like maybe an influx of like the Aldeans and the Luke Bryan bars, like these big name like?
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but that was one of the bars I,
I think,
was at. That
yeah,
I
I
was
think,
waiting
because
for
I
it.
think when you get those, I mean, I think, you get those three, like you said, those 3-level bars, and they got a band on every different level, and it's just, I think it's, I mean, and God bless Amy, because she told me, like, when we go to Toots's and stuff, and you hear about the stories of, like, George Jones falling
Right.
asleep in the back of the,
Right.
they kind of had to wake him up to go across to the Ryman, and
Right.
this and that, and you think, like, how many phenomenal songwriters and the pioneers of country music were in these bars when it was
Yeah.
just, and you could go in and they'd play a set and go over and sit in the bar.
Right. Right.
And now it's like, it's so commercialized.
Yeah,
It's,
it is.
It's
So, like when the Bridge Tavern opened up down in Wheeling,
Mm-hmm.
I've had several conversations with them, and I was really excited when they opened that up. And I started walking the streets of Wheeling, and I'm visualizing, and I'm looking at these buildings, I'm visualizing, and then you got the Waterfront Hall opens up, and I'm like, I've talked, with Dan Millison and the whole Millison family about that, and I'm like, I'm walking this, and like my ultimate vision that I had was let's turn Wheeling into Little Nashville. Let's bring what was in 1960s and 70s in Nashville. We could have that here in Wheeling if we can get things together and that. And for me as a songwriter, I'm like I would love. I've reached out several times to Waterfront Hall to put a songwriter round together.
That'd be cool and in the round.
Yeah. I got a friend out of Kentucky, Reed Fields. I'm going down my ventures down in Kentucky that week. We're going to do songwriter rounds down there. To me, I think it would be really awesome.
Yeah.
I think if we focused enough on it, that we could pull more songwriters. I know, like I used to do open mics at certain places and that over the years, and everybody's doing covers and that, and then I'd show up. I was like, hey, I'm gonna do an original song, and then lo and behold, when I get done, they start all over again. And this person came up and was like, well, I'm gonna do an original song.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, if we could just, that's the one thing I think in this area generally, and not everybody desires to be a songwriter. They see you as, you're a singer-songwriter. Me, I'm a songwriter-singer. Songwriting to me is more important than the singing of it. Even though when I write a song, I'm like, yeah, I can't see anybody else other than me singing that. But,
Yeah.
at the same time, if somebody would, I'm not going to say no.
Yeah.
I would love the opportunity for somebody to sing one, but that's the one thing that, the way that the music industry has turned, even as songwriters and royalties and what have you, that it's just not the same as it used to be. And it's just, now the money is in live shows. I mean, even here as a regional artist and
you're
that.
not going to make it in streaming. And
Yeah,
Spotify,
with the streaming whole deal that's going on and that, and the conspiracy, somebody came up with this idea and thought this is how we can, as I've talked, with Nashville and record labels down there, and that the one thing that they like followers, when they tell you, it's like there's not a record company in Nashville that doesn't know who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they follow up with there's not a record company in Nashville that wants to work with you. And I'm like, I kind of got offended by that. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, you are who you are, and they can't change that. And that's what they don't like. And I'm like, well, there's that. But, at the other end, if the music's good, the music's good. So here's what they're doing now. It's like you have everything except for you don't have that major following. You don't have 50,000 followers.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is the way that the industry is now working. When a record company grabs a hold of you, there's not as much risk involved because they already know you got a good following.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like, well, let's take a chance on this.
Take a chance. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And so it's like kind of favored them. The first time I go down in there and I'm working, I'm talking, I meet a guy from Sony Records at McDonald's across from the Bluebird Cafe, and, he tells me, he's like, man, I had this demo with me that, I'm not proud of the vocals on it, but, it had songs like Nothing Ever Seems to Do on it. He leaves and then like 15 minutes later, he comes back and he's like, man, do you mind if I sit down here? And so now I'm in Nashville. I'm like, Jesus, this guy going to kill me? So he shows me all his credentials and that. He's like, I'm with Sony Records. I want to talk to you. And I'm like, holy shit, here's my break.
Yeah.
And he's like, here's the deal, and if you go on Sony's, website, if you just go in there, you want to record, hit that button and just follow down through it. They will straight up tell you, $280,000, $320,000, we'll let you in.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that's, they're not taking any chances now.
Yeah.
You're going to pay for this and you're going to have your following. And if it works out, great. If it don't, we ain't got a dime in it.
Right.
Yeah.
We're just sticking our name on the the business has changed so much. To the aspect of, because I get this asked a lot, is it easier now, as an independent artist with, you got Spotify out there and I was mind blown, every time we record something, we release a single out there and we're like, this is it. 180,000 singles go out a day on Spotify.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't realize it.
Yeah, it was 150 some thousand as I'm talking to a president of a record company down there. He just he hits a button. He's like, well, today there was 183,000 new ones out today. Now, there it is. And you're drowned in that swamp of not every one of it's good. Right. This is the industry that we're in now.
Yeah.
Everybody can make an album. Don't even have to make an album. You can make a single, not even have anything physical, download it, put it up there, Spotify, Apple, the whole 9 yards and that, and you're drowned in all this. And it's like the audience has to search and search and search to find you, unless you're going to sit there and, you can go there and you can buy the click farms that sit there and clicks, sure, you can make it look good.
Yeah.
To try to build your audience. You can say, well, yeah, I got, 200,000. Well, yeah, right. For $2,500, you can have 200,000 streams. Now, in, the next quarter, Spotify and all of them's going to go in there and wipe that out because they're not going to pay royalties on that.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did you really have? So what's the point in doing that?
And plus, as like a new potential audience, I think it leaves a bit bad taste in somebody's mouth if they would click on let's see who's commenting on Ashley's stuff. Let's see who's liking it, and they look and it's just bots.
Right.
You can tell when somebody's a bot
Right.
when they
Right.
have no pictures, one follower, and they're following 2,000 people.
Right.
And
Right.
you kind of see it's obvious what they do.
Right.
And like you said, record companies will, even if you build yourself up like that with these click farms, record companies will automatically know, okay, we'll just take all those away and see how much organic.
Right. That's exactly it. They're looking for that organic audience,
Because if you think now, the people that you are hearing on mainstream radio and stuff like that, if you look at it, and this is just a wild ass guess, how many of those people started out on TikTok?
Right.
It wasn't somebody that paid their dues all the way up.
Right.
But I'm not discounting the people that have been writing and doing everything for years.
Yeah.
But they get a hook on YouTube.
Right.
And then they get followers, and
Yep.
the next thing you know, we're at Jurgles looking at Priscilla Block.
Right.
Yeah.
From just same thing. My wife and his wife found her on TikTok, and there she goes. And it's just, it's I don't know. I mean, it
has its good and it has
right.
its bad.
I was gonna say I see
Yeah.
both sides of it
Yeah.
because if you can do that, that's fantastic. But I don't know, man. It's
It's a tough dream.
Yeah.
I always said there's dairy farming and music business is a lot of the same. You put a lot of time, you put a lot of effort in, you don't get a lot of reward back out of it. You sit there and you will beat your head off the wall trying to figure it out, how to make a dollar at it and how to make it work. That's why I think I've done both, and trust me, they are a lot alike.
But the best thing is when you lay your head down at night, are you happy with what you're doing?
And that's just where the older I get, that's the more of what it comes to. You only get so much time on this earth, and I got the luxury of working with a young lady up in my hometown, Linda Myers. She's 12 years old. And so I started watching her like on Facebook. Her grandmother would, she was karaoke at her house now, and her grandmother would. And so I would my son's in the same class as her, and I'd say, tell her to do this, get deeper breaths and all this and that. So I ended up getting to work with her, and we was doing the Uptown Caddis last week. And so I invited her up to do a song. She wanted to do a song with me, and so she picked a song, and I'm like, no, you're 12. I'm, a lot older. So I'm like, I ended up writing her a song, and it's called In This Lifetime. And, it's just basically me telling her, if you got something you love, just do it. There's going to be people tell you that you can't do it. Right. You're never going to make it, and you just, go do it. You will find your way. Just go do it. And, that's what the older I get, the more it's just like the materialistic things doesn't matter to me near as much as I'm running out of time.
Right.
And, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Well, I think we hit the time mark right on the.
And I think he wrapped it up perfectly with that.
Yeah.
So it's
good
well, actually, it was good to have you in here.
I appreciate you having me down.
To have you in, so it's awesome, and we'll get out and see you, and I appreciate you, and good luck.
And do you have any roadmap to where you'd put out the new album, or you just kind of just working on it, and then whenever you get a better idea?
Well, each time I do this, I approach it differently. This round, we're going to record the several singles, slowly release them, not slowly, but methodically release them with a video. If you release the album late in the fall, I learned this the hard way on the EP, you literally say if you release it in September, you only get to December to get that thing reviewed. Come January, it's a new year, and they won't review it. So I have learned, I like to say that it's going to be in 2025. Singles will be out that will be on the album. It's liable to be a 2026 release. Okay. But if something comes along and I can get this thing hammered out quicker than what I'm thinking, it's possible that by May, June that we're cutting the album.
We'll get you back in here to promote it along with the music videos and the shows. Coming up, Ashley Best, thank you very much, sir.
Hey, I appreciate you. It's been fun.